What is the most powerful resource on Earth? Is it money? Oil? Nuclear weapons? What if I told you there was a resource that's been around since the beginning of human civilization that is more powerful than all of the above? What is this resource, you might ask? The answer is female beauty. Okay, I'm not sure if it's actually more powerful than a nuclear bomb, but you can certainly make a case it is. From the dawn of mankind, men have engaged in all sorts of giga-cucked behavior in pursuit of female beauty, dying in wars, throwing away all their hard-earned money, desperately chasing and begging on their knees for a woman. They were willing to sell their souls for women. One problem I have with the whole manosphere movement is that it irrationally blames women for exploiting their most powerful resource, when in reality, greed and corruption are inherent human traits and not specific to women. When we see a rich millionaire blowing money on Lambos and yachts, we might sit here and think it's silly. But are you so sure you wouldn't do it if you were in their position? Maybe you would, maybe not. But it would be much harder to resist the urge either way. In the exact same way, women have intuitively figured out through the millennia that their beauty is an incredibly powerful resource, and as human nature goes, they naturally want to exploit it and gain as much power from it as possible. Blame them as much as you want. You would do it too if you were them. This does, however, beg the question: what happens when the power of this resource, for whatever reason, begins to diminish? Well, we are finding this out in real time thanks to the chadliness of Gen Z men. I'm sure you've all seen the report by now that 63% of Gen Z men are single. What is, however, more shocking than that is, it's not so much a bunch of loser incels who can't get laid. In that same study, a lot of the single men said they don't even want a relationship. They're not even looking. You might say this sounds like cope at first, but based on my real-life experiences, I would disagree. This is anecdotal, but as a millennial, I recently joined an athletics team to rechase the athletic glory of my 20s. Every other guy on my team is Gen Z, and like most stereotypical jocks, they're tall, athletic, and good-looking. They absolutely would have plenty of options on the dating market if they wanted, yet none of them are even remotely interested. I have massive respect for this as I watched so many guys of my generation and generations past absolutely ruin themselves chasing women. At first, I thought maybe it was just an anecdote, a small sample size, an aberration. But the more I looked, the more it became apparent, this is the new world. Even women are starting to complain all over the internet and real life that men don't put in effort anymore. Men don't approach anymore. Men aren't interested these days. The list goes on. The evidence from every angle is overwhelming at this point. The allure of beautiful women doesn't hold the same power it used to. I just have one question, though, to all you Gen Z chads out there. How? Just how have you become so disciplined at such a young age that you've been able to successfully resist and not be controlled by arguably the most powerful resource in human history? I remember what it was like to be a teenager and a young guy in my 20s. The natural biological male SX drive is an insanely vicious, merciless machine.
Yeah, you know why? Because your dick's like a dreamer. You know? Your dick believes. It's like a motivational speaker. I don't give a shit what question you ask it. It's always like, yeah, absolutely. Sounds like a plan. Exit strategy. Later. We'll be fine.
It relentlessly demands you chase women and doesn't shut up until you find one. This is actually the direct reason as to why female beauty was such a powerful resource up until now. Having the mental discipline to ignore that, especially at a young age, is unfathomable to me as a millennial guy. Hey, maybe. I'm just another millennial simp too. I have a few theories as to why this is the case, but these are just theories. Definitely feel free to correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on any of these. Number 1, video games. I've always wondered why girls hate video games so much. Sure, they can distract you from spending time with her, but so can working, sports, and any other hobbies guys have. Why such vitriolic hatred towards video games specifically? Then, it hit me. Video games are a direct threat to the most powerful resource a woman has. That being said, millennials had video games growing up too, and we still simped like none other, as I discussed in my previous video. But I wonder how much of Zoomer male's chadliness is a result of drastically improved graphics. This might not be enough to overcome the most powerful resource in the world. This, however, can definitely give it a run for its money. Number 2, social media. Modern women absolutely exploited social media to exponentially magnify the power of their beauty tenfold, getting infinite amounts of likes, comments, and general male validation. But it kind of feels like we've reached a tipping point where they've shot themselves in the foot in a way. There comes a point where any market becomes too competitive and oversaturated. And it feels like we're starting to get to that point when it comes to social media. I remember when I was in high school, if you saw a beautiful girl in your town, it was really eye-opening and memorable. There weren't so many of them, and so when you saw one, it was special, and she was sure to get a lot of attention. Nowadays, young guys growing up have seen every pretty face imaginable from every corner of Instagram. Their feeds are constantly lit up by this, and at some point, just like with anything in life, you become desensitized and stop caring as much. Number 3, adaptation. Gen Z is by far the most adaptable generation I've ever seen, and it doesn't come as a surprise when you consider they grew up and came of age at a time when the world was changing at a breakneck pace. They had to adapt to survive, and the dating world is no exception. When I think of my generation, I don't necessarily fault my fellow millennial bros for making bad decisions. Feminism had only begun to affect dating, and a lot of us were just blindsided by it. But even as the changes became clear and evident, a lot of us still stubbornly hung on to our traditional, outdated belief system. For example, when I was in college, I remember feminist propaganda being pushed about how women were strong and independent and didn't need a man. It became clear relationships and marriage were no longer a priority for millennial women, yet it was still far and away the #1 priority for most millennial men. This created a massive power imbalance that I believe is largely responsible for how and why modern dating has gotten to this point today. Gen Z men, however, have adapted beautifully. Every Gen Z guy I know pretty much has the mentality that they care about their own career, hobbies, and passions first. And if a girl happens to like them and makes it easy for them, they'll take it. But they're not going out of their way to chase girls. This might sound bad at face value, but when you think about it, it's purely an adaptation to what modern women started. Modern women decided they wanted to prioritize their own careers and education over men first, and so I don't see how they can blame us for doing the same. This leads us to the ultimate, perhaps most important question in all of this. Who is actually the more independent gender, men or women? This current ridiculous gender war that modern feminism started has resulted in a vicious arms race between men and women to reduce dependency on each other and see who's really the more independent gender. On one hand, you have feminists screaming that they don't need men and they're strong and independent. On the other hand, you got the men going their own way, claiming they don't need women. If you ask me, I think both sides are a little extreme, and ideally we'd just end this nonsense and learn to be normal again. But realistically, with the current state of affairs, I think we can all agree that's unlikely to happen anytime soon. So who actually wins here? Here's the thing. I'm going to answer completely honestly and objectively right now. I think in any other era, women easily win this war. There simply weren't enough other entertainment vices in previous eras. Even if you go back to my generation, women would often withhold sex from men as a way to get what they wanted, and that was brutally effective. But yeah, good luck trying that on a Gen Z guy. He's just going to enjoy playing his video games in peace. Between all the new modern entertainment vices we have today, along with the general Chad mindset and adaptability most Zoomer guys seem to have, I actually think Gen Z men won the modern dating game. For the first time, we're now seeing women complain on TikTok that guys don't approach them anymore. Guys stopped putting in effort. Guys just don't seem interested anymore. What they're really saying in all of this is, they're getting worried because the most powerful resource they possess, one that they've used and exploited throughout human history, is suddenly greatly diminished in power and they don't know what to do about it. For the record, I think it's kind of sad dating has devolved to this point in the first place, to where instead of talking about finding true love and connection, we're talking about winning an arms race of reducing codependency. But that is the unfortunate reality we live in. And you kind of just have to play the game to survive these days. With that all being said, I just have one thing to say to all you Gen Z Chads out there. Congratulations. You have done what no generation of men before you could. You overcame the most powerful resource on Earth. You won the modern dating game.